So we're continuing with this technical meditation. Om Namo. Oh, first we have to chant Radha Madhava. Jaya Radha. We'll do it
Sorry,
responsive.
sorry.
That's okay. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. 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 Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Jasodanandana Raja Jana Ranjana. Jasodanandana Raja Jana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Jasodanandana Raja Jana Ranjana. Jasodanandana Raja Jana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. So, Srimad Bhagavatam, translation purport by Srila Prabhupada. This is Canto 2, Chapter 2, Text 21. Tomorrow will be 22, so it'll be 2, 2, 2, 2. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Tasmat Bruvor so let me chant the verse. Tasmat Bruvor Antaram Unnayeta.
Tasmat Dhruvorantaram Unayeta.
Niruddha Saptayatano Napeksha.
Niruddha Saptayatano Napeksha.
Stitva Muhurtardam Akunta Drishtir.
Stitva Muhurtardam Akunta Drishtir.
Nirvidya Murdhan Visarjait Parangata.
Nirvidya Nurdham Vrishishit Paramgata.
So it's talking here about the about the life air. And so here it says tasmat, from there, because it started in the navel and just being brought up higher and higher in the body. So tasmat, from there, so where we left it off was sotalu mulam, uh, the root of the palate. So the palate, and tasmat, from there, bruvor antaram, between the eyebrows. Antaram means between. Bruvor, the two eyebrows. Unayeta, one should lift it up or bring it up. Niruddha Saptayatano, blocking Sapta, the seven ayatana, outlets of life air. Niruddha, because if you don't block the outlets, because you're bringing the life air, the idea is to shoot the life air up through the head. This is something which is going to GBC said is going to be a new requirement for Brahmin initiation. You have to be able to shoot your life air through your head. And of course, women are not eligible to apply for that. So actually, the GBC did very strongly defend the right of women to have second initiation. So Niruddha Saptaya Tano, so blocking the seven other exits, Anapekshaha, independent of all material enjoyment. So Anapeksha means literally just, as I say in Brazil, nengai, just not really interested in anything else, just indifferent to other things. As Prabhupada says, independent of all material enjoyment. Stitva muhurta ardham akunta drishti. So remaining there for half a moment. What's our fearless director? So remaining there for half a moment, akunta drishtir. This is interesting. Drishti literally means vision or sight or seeing. And akunta, Prabhupada says back home, back to Godhead, akunta has basically the same meaning as vikunta or then vaikunta. Kunta is anxiety, so akunta means no anxiety, which Prabhupada translates back home, back to Godhead. So in other words, Prabhupada takes akunta to mean vikunta or vaikunta. So akunta drishtir, having turn the sound up there. So having a spiritual vision or a vision free of anxiety, nirbidya, piercing, Prabhupada translates that punching through something. Vid, of course, means to break or to divide. And it's from vid you get beta, as in beta, aveda. So beta means difference, or it also means division. So here, near vidya, literally it's sort of like breaking out. In other words, punching through. So near vidya more than, so I mean, it's interesting, literally means breaking out through the head. Near vidya more than, so breaking out through the head, or piercing or punching through the head, as Prabhupada says it. Visarjate, one should give up, one should let go of the body in parangataha, and then because one has gone to the Supreme. So I'll read Prabhupada's translation, and I'll go back and chant this. Thereafter, the bhakti yogi should push the life air between the eyebrows, and then blocking the 7 outlets of the life air, he should maintain his aim for going back home, back to Godhead. If he is completely free from all desires for material enjoyment, he should then reach the cerebral hole and give up his material connections, having gone to the Supreme. So we'll chant this verse. Tasmad bhruvor antaram unayeta niruddha saptayatano napeksha niruddha saptayatano napeksha Stitva muhurtardhamma kunta drishtir Nirvidya murdhan visarjay parangata Tasmat bhruvorantaram unnayeta Niruddha saptayatano napeksha Stitva muhurtardham akunta drishtir Vidyamurdhan visarjait parangata. No takers?
Tasmad Bruvor Antaramunayeta
Tasmad Dhruvorantaram Unnayeta
Niruddha Santayatano Napeksha
Niruddha Saptayatano Napeksha
Stitva Muhurtardam Akunta Drishti
Stitva Muhurtardam Akunta Drishtir
Vidya Murdam Visijit Paramgata
Vidyamurdhan visarjait parangata. Okay? So men, women, eunuchs. Okay. So Prabhupada's translation. I read the Prabhupada's translation. Now read Prabhupada's purport. The process of giving up all material connections and returning home back to Godhead, the Supreme, is recommended herein. The condition is that one should be completely freed from desire for material enjoyment. There are different grades of material enjoyments in respect to duration of life and sensual gratification. The highest plane of sensual enjoyment for the longest period of life is mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita, going to the heavenly planets, it's 920. All are but material enjoyments, and one should be thoroughly convinced that he has no need of such a long duration of life, even in the Brahmaloka planet. He must return home, back to Godhead, and must not be attracted by any amount of material facilities. In the Bhagavad Gita 259, it is said that this sort of material detachment is possible to attain when one is acquainted with the supreme association of life. Parang drishtva nivartate. From the Bhagavad Gita, literally seeing something higher, one pulls back from material enjoyment. It's kind of translated, not translated, but sort of depicted as higher taste. That's where the higher taste thing comes from. Literally seeing something higher. One cannot be freed from material attraction unless he has a complete understanding of the nature of spiritual life. The propaganda by a certain class of impersonalists that spiritual life is void of all varieties is dangerous propaganda to mislead the living beings into becoming more and more attracted by material enjoyments. In other words, the impersonalists are degrading people because the people hear that when you're liberated, there's no enjoyment. So, what's that song from Get Back with Beatles says, she gets it while she can or something. So, ultimately, if the ultimate goal is just not to have any personal enjoyment, then you have to take what you can get. It makes sense gratification all the more valuable and unique. Whereas if you understand that I don't have to, quote unquote, fall in love in this world because my real love is going to be in the spiritual world. I don't have to try to enjoy things in this world because I'm going to a higher place. It's like, let's say, for example, you're in some third world country, and then you're going back to a first world country where you can, let's say you have a beautiful house and this and that. And so, but to get there, you have to get on a plane. Now, it's not very comfortable. If you stayed in that third world country, you could just walk around and all that, but you go through the austerity of getting on a plane because you're going to your real home where you actually have much nicer facilities, right? And so that's the move. It's not that we're doing austerities just because we're supposed to do austerities. We're trying to let go of the wrong world so that we can embrace the real world. Therefore, there's a famous verse, I think, by Narada Muni that goes, the Acharyas quote it in their commentaries in the Bhagavatam, that Antar Bahir Jadi Haris, how does it begin? Antar Bahir Jadi Haris Tapasata Tatkin, Nantar Bahir Jadi Haris Tapasata Tatkin. If Hari is within and outside of everything, what is the use of other austerities? And if Hari is not within and outside of everything, what is the use of other austerities? And there's another one. There's another two lines which are Aradhito Jadi Haris Tapasat Tatatkim. If you worshipped Hari, why do you need other austerities? And Naradhito Jadi Haris. And if you haven't worshipped Hari, Tapasat Tatatkim, what is the use of your austerities? So we have enough austerities. I mean, belonging to a religious community is a very good austerity, religious institution, right? Have you ever noted that? I mean, belonging to any institution, including a religious institution, is interesting. It involves certain austerities. It's just like being with a family involves certain austerities, but that's your family. So anyway, so Prabhupada says the propaganda, the impersonalists, that spiritual life is void, misleads living beings into becoming more and more attracted by material enjoyments because then they think that's all I've got. As such, persons with a poor fund of knowledge cannot have any conception of the Param, the Supreme. They try to stick to the varieties of material enjoyment. Every impersonal guru that came to America from India in the 60s and 70s, every one of them, without exception, the big ones, the marquee gurus, They all fell down women, and usually multiple liaisons, isn't it? I mean, we can go through the list, but why even mention it? I remember one time one of these gurus, his name was Sachidananda. Remember? He was one of the kind of like the big gurus that came, and so one time he came to visit New Dwarka in the early '80s, and I was there in LA, and so they asked me to go there and help receive him because I was a senior person there. So he said something impersonal, and so I just I wasn't trying to be rude, but I just said actually. So then he played the I've been in the movement longer than you thing. He said, "Oh, so you know more than me." And I said, "No, but Krishna knows more than both of us." And then I quote the Gita verse, and at that point he just kind of walked on. So anyway, it's funny how all these big gurus came. They all preached impersonalism, and they all ended up in the sack. I mean, they all ended up engaged in illicit sex.
There was this yogi came to visit Prabhupada. I was there in Denver. And this older yogi in saffron came with his very young, very pretty blonde assistant. Just the two of them, they came. And so Prabhupada then gave a lecture on fallen yogis. a strong lecture. And then when the lecture was over, the yogi went and touched Prabhupada's feet and ran out. With his blonde assistant.
They're even holding your belly, so that's a good laugh.
So Prabhupada says, so the impersonalists try to stick to the varieties of material enjoyment, although they may flatter themselves as being Brahman realized souls. Such less intelligent persons cannot have any conception of the Param that's mentioned in this verse, and therefore they cannot reach the Supreme. The devotees have full knowledge of the spiritual world, personality of Godhead, and his transcendental association in unlimited spiritual planets called Vaikuntha Lokas. Hence, herein, Akunta Drishti is mentioned. Akunta and Vaikuntha convey the same import, and only one who has his aim fixed upon the spiritual world and personal association with the Godhead can give up his material connections even while living in the material world. This Parang and the Parang Dhamma mentioned in several places in the Bhagavad Gita are one and the same thing. One who goes to the Parang Dhamma does not return to the material world. This freedom is not possible even by reaching the topmost loka of the material world. And of course, we still have the word loka in English, as in location, locate, locus, and all that. I sometimes say in Dwapara Yuga, the Vedic real estate agents would say the most important things are loka, loka, loka. Location. So, anyway, actually, one time I was giving a Bhagavatam class in LA. Prabhupada was there. And in those days, it was in the old temple, which was actually very nice, and the one Prabhupada wanted to have as the temple. And so Prabhupada could kind of hear the kirtan from below. I mean, not perfectly, but hear the kirtan of the class. And so I was giving a Bhagavatam class, and I've never in my life planned to give a funny class. It's just, there's just all kinds of funny things about this world. So, so I was giving a class, and there was a lot of laughter. Devotees were laughing. So after the class, I was actually thinking, I was wondering, is this right? in front of the deities, Bhagavatam class, should I be? And again, I didn't plan it; it just came out that way. So I was concerned about that, and so I walked up to see Prabhupada. I just wanted to see him after the class, and I walked in. The first thing he said to me, "This is very nice. Keep the devotees jolly." Because apparently he'd heard the laughter, and he asked his servant, who's giving class. So the life air passes through 7 openings, namely 2 eyes, 2 nostrils, 2 ears, and 1 mouth. Generally, it passes through the mouth at the time of an ordinary man's death, but the yogi, as above mentioned, who controls the life air in his own way, generally releases the life air by puncturing the cerebral hole in the head. The yogi therefore blocks up all the above mentioned 7 openings so that the life air will naturally burst forth through the cerebral hole. This is the sure sign of a great devotee's leaving the material connection. So a point I wanted to make here, Prabhupada Ki Jai, point I wanted to make is, in a sense, we're doing the same thing. Not anatomically in the way described here, but for example, it starts with the life air. This whole process started nabhyam stitam, situated in the navel. So that's really one of our problems, isn't it? Eating. And so, full belly, barriga llena, corazón contento. As they say in Spanish, the belly full, the heart's content. And so, in a sense, if your life air is in the belly, it means that's kind of, where you're focused. Your life is kind of about eating. And so, as we know, even devotees who have fallen in many ways, it's very rare to find a devotee so fallen he can't enjoy a good Hare Krishna feast. That's one regular principle that, people can hang on to, right? So when it says you have to lift up the life air from the belly, I mean, the way we do that is we lift up our life focus from eating. I'm just, or just trying to get material things. So you lift from the navel to the heart. And then there's the heart, as people say, the heart chakra. It's amazing. It's amazing just how stupid one can become when one keeps saying that it's not about the head, it's about the heart. Because probably most of the, emotional suffering in this world, or a lot of it, or the worst of it, is because people formed relationships just because of what they felt without any intelligent analysis of the creature I'm actually going to be marrying or living my life with. And so, but still, I mean, going to the point where you go to the heart, and there are, of course, as we know, cerebral type cells in the heart. So going from the belly to the heart is progress. And from there to the chest, from there to the root of the palate, and up to the proper, and then it goes up between the eyebrows to the brain. In other words, you can see it's actually moving from the more physical places up to the intelligence, to where the brain is, and then leaving. So what that indicates is that one has to leave this world intelligently. In other words, you have to, when you finally leave this world, in a sense, you're doing it, the sort of the trampoline, or the platform from which you're leaving is the intelligence, buddhi. And so that's what bhakti yoga is. It's moving up from the merely carnal or physical desires and focus of your life, finally focusing your life on spiritual intelligence and then leaving. So we may not do the physical thing. I don't recommend that any of you, as Prabhupada says here, what's that word he uses? Punch through your skull. But we can raise our focus and then ultimately transcend this world. So any questions on these points? Yes.
How is it decided that you'll use a Akunta or Vaikunta in
How, what?
Sanskrit? If they both mean the same thing, what differentiates both words?
Well, Akunta, Akunta and Drishti, they're just direct synonyms. Like we say the spiritual world, the kingdom of God. So every language, every developed language has lots of synonyms. They're just different ways to say it. And also Akunta, if you take the literal meaning, drishti means to have a vision or a focus in which there's no anxiety, there's no regret, there's no regret about leaving this world, there's no fear of leaving this world. So even the act of leaving, so Akunta here also refers to the state of mind of the person who's transcending the world. Because to go to a world where there is no anxiety, you have to be an anxiety-free person. Otherwise, you can't go to the spiritual world and people say, "How do you like it here?" "Well, it's really nice, but I'm kind of nervous." So, and here, I mean, the word Akunta is not directly referring to the spiritual world, although it can. I mean, it certainly one can take it that way. It's I mean, literally saying that your vision, your sight is, your vision is Akunta, which can mean your eyes are on the spiritual world, or it can simply mean that you're seeing everything around you, you're seeing the whole process you're engaged in, and you're seeing your ultimate destination, which is Vaikuntha. You're seeing all of that without worrying, without anxiety, without fear, regret. And the same way I want us to practice Krishna consciousness. We have to be willing to just dedicate ourselves to Krishna service without foolish things like, what if I would have stayed in the material world? What about that girl I gave up? Or what about that guy? Or what about, you know what I mean? I mean, some devotees, in fact, they regret it so much, they finally decide to take, well, maybe I'll go back and just do that. It's interesting how it's funny because when you, as Rupa Goswami says in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, you take up Krishna consciousness, you're elevated to the spiritual platform, and the center of material life ends. And we've seen many devotees when they go back to material life, they actually go back to where they were. It's almost like a sci-fi movie where, let's say, like someone goes to some other world and then they have another life, but then they want to go back, and suddenly they wake up back on Earth the same moment they left. So even though they maybe spent years on this other magical world, when they go back to Earth, they just wake up and it's the same day they left. And some devotees, I've seen a lot like that. Like, for example, devotees, they were hippies and they joined the Hare Krishna movement. And then 10 years later, when there are no more hippies, they go back and become one of the last of the hippies. We've all seen that, right? So it's like Krishna says, okay, you want a refund? You can go right back where I found you.
That's that's interesting actually because this is a discussion I've had many times with a lot of people that our body that is our initial karma, is our guna karma, is not changing too much through the process of Krishna consciousness. I mean, it can change in some,
No, but basically it's the same body.
the same
Yeah.
karma, the same, how you said, pulling, no,
Yeah.
what was the word? Urges that Rupa Goswami was, what was that word?
The same what?
Impulses?
Yeah. Oh, Vega impulses.
Yeah, the impulses, they stay there, they are not.
Well, because when you took up Krishna consciousness, or when we take up Krishna consciousness, we were engaged at a certain level. So when you want to go back, you have to wrap that up.
Yeah.
Your unfinished business.
Yeah.
It's like, it's so so what we need to do, and here's the ironic point, that if you remain in Krishna's service, then Krishna gratifies those desires anyway. You know, what if I would have married waltzing Matilda? Then, by the way, that's an Australian song. You know that song, don't you? Waltzing Matilda. We're not going to do a kirtan of that. So, yeah, what if I would have married waltzing Matilda? And become part owner of her dance studio. So, but if you remain in Krishna's service, Krishna will actually arrange to fulfill your desires or just show you how stupid they were by putting you through different experiences that do not degrade you. So we don't have to degrade ourselves. You could say, well, what should I do? Because I do have material desires. Well, you should stay in Krishna's service and depend on Krishna to make arrangements so you experience what you need to experience. You satisfy your curiosity, but it's done in a way that is not degrading. It can happen in dreams. It can happen in hundreds of different ways. It can happen in so many different ways. There's one really interesting scene in of course, one of the great Charles Dickens novels, Little Dorrit. This is something many of us have experienced. In this case, it's a man experiencing a woman, but women have had the same experience with men. And that is Arthur, what's his name? The name of the hero of the story. But anyway, he was he's a child whose mother didn't really love him very much. She was like this English, like really, really heavy Protestant, like no emotions, no feelings. And so, and his father was a businessman. So his mother, he was sent away to the continent to study. This is sort of a typical thing at the time. You find it often in the novels of the time where the parents they had like this stern Protestant English culture, Victorian culture, where you have to, you can't be too emotional. And even children were actually sent, this is a little pre-Victorian, but babies were sent away to be raised by some nurse until they're old enough to behave properly. And then they came back. And to give a famous example of that, Jane Austen. Jane Austen was sent away and then came back when she had, learned some manners, 3 or 4, whatever it was. And she never really bonded with them. And the result is that in all of her 6 famous novels, in every one, the mother is either a fool or dead. The only good mothers are dead. For example, in Emma, the mother was good, but she passed away. So when we begin Emma, the mother's gone. In her last novel, Persuasion, she had a very good mother who died before the novel begins. And then in Pride and Prejudice, you have Mrs. Bennet, who's a complete sort of histrionic, out of control lady. And then you have Sense and Sensibility, where the mother has no more maturity or intelligence than her 16-year-old daughter. In fact, always agrees on all the foolish decisions of her daughter and almost kills her by doing that, almost causes her death. And there's no living, like, intelligent mother in all of her novels.
Interesting.
Yeah, and she was sent away. So I forget what was the point I was making.
That your desires or whatever become fulfilled in some way.
Yeah,
Maybe through a dream, and Jane Austen through her books.
yeah, yeah. At least, and
Tell what she thinks of her mother.
yeah. So
Arthur, little
Oh. What's that?
Something about Arthur and Little Dorrit.
Oh yeah, Arthur Little. Oh, so anyway, so he's sent away, right? He's sent away, and then his father dies, and he has an inheritance to collect, so he has to come back. Arthur Clenham, I think his name is, and he kind of dreads seeing his mother because she's like, just like this, just really stern, like Protestant. Not that all Protestants are like that, but some of them were. So he comes back. And anyway, it's an amazing story. There's a great movie made of it, actually, by the BBC. If you want to see it, it has to be the one made in the 2000s, but it's a great movie. Our mutual friend, A-list actors. But anyway, so then he has to go see his father's business partner about his inheritance because there's always legal things to do. And so this man's daughter, uh, when Arthur was a young boy, maybe like 12, 13, 14, he had this like ridiculous crush on her. And he was just like head over heels, as they say, just completely had this like. And so now he's coming, he has to go see his father's partner. So he's going to see this lady who hasn't married. So, she's unmarried and she was the goddess of his, youth. And so he's really nervous. So he goes or he sees the man and then he says, "Oh, my daughter would like to say hello." So then he's waiting there, just terrible anxiety. And the girl comes down the stairways and she's gained a little weight and she's kind of silly the way she talks. And she's kind of someone he's never going to fall in love with. And so he had this whole image of her. And then he sees her, for what she really is. And of course, he's very nice. I mean, he's British. So he was very nice and polite and said the right thing. But she said, "I know what you're thinking. You're disappointed," because she can tell. I mean, girls can tell those things. And so, but it's just interesting, isn't it, that he was like cured of that fantasy.
Liquid beauty moment.
What?
Liquid beauty moment.
Yeah. So there are. So Krishna, in many different ways, and many people have had that experience. Someone you really had some vision of, and then you go and see the person, and it's so. I mean, in many different ways, Krishna, and all we really need to know is that if we stay with Krishna, if we surrender to Krishna, he'll get us there. He will take us past all of our material desires, and he will take us back to the gateway to heaven. He will take us to the spiritual world. And when we get there, we will not be frustrated. It's like, well, better to be frustrated with Krishna. You can't do that. You can't go to this. And so Krishna knows that. Krishna knows that the only way you can come back to home is if you're not frustrated, if your desires are fulfilled. But Krishna will fulfill our desires in a way that doesn't degrade us. Whereas if we try to take the matter in our own hands, we will degrade ourselves. And that's why if one's faith is really strong, you don't leave Krishna. Because if I just stay with Krishna, he'll work it all out. It will all work out. And at the end, I will be a very happy soul. It's an important lesson. Yes.
In the translation, it's interesting. Prabhupada says there after the bhakti yoga, not just the yogi.
Where is it? Thereafter.
Yeah. He refers to the bhakti yogi, not just.
Right.
Because you would think from this verse it might just be the yogi.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's a good point. If we look back at the context as revealed by the previous verses, I mean, in a sense, it is a technical yoga description. Uh, the context in this chapter makes it clear that the goal is Krishna. So but Shuka is also just focusing here on the technical yoga description, but it's understood from the context.
The reason I say that, the translation in the prior verses are such things as the yogi desiring to leave the planet, the yogi.
Although the previous verse to this one is the meditative devotee.
Yeah, it is. And it sort of shifts from yogi to meditative devotee.
Well, because the point is that ultimately the word yogi means a devotee. Because Krishna says at the end of chapter 5, Yoginam api sarvesham, of all yogis, the one who's mudgatena, literally who has gone to me. Yoginam api sarvesham mudgatena antaratmana, within himself or herself. Shadhavan bhajate jomam. Same yukta tamomata, the one who is with faith worships me is the best yogi.
It's interesting how Prabhupada kind of works up to bhakti yoga.
Yeah, although it's in a sense that reflects also what's happening in the Sanskrit.
And in text 18, he says specifically in Vaishnava.
18, yeah.
In text 18, yeah. So it's continuing that, like it did say that, and it's coming back.
Yeah, and also in other verses he says, yeah, so Krishna is mentioned throughout this chapter. Yes.
But he's very
So
focused.
as you're describing this process of how, the time of death is, the soul needs to go from here to here to here. I mean, it's such a confusing moment, for the soul that is about to leave the body. We've read descriptions of, all the emotions and everything. How does I mean, you sort of answered my question earlier, saying that Krishna will take care of, taking us back home. So I'm just trying to figure out, if I had to, the moment of death.
I'll explain that. First of all, I'll tell an Indian joke. It's a short one, unlike some people I know. There was this Indian guy, he had a merchant, he had a store, and all his sons helped him in the store. And so he came to the moment of death, and he's lying there on the bed. And so he gave all his sons demigod names because he wanted to go to the higher planets in the material world. So he's lying there on his deathbed, and he said, Varun, are you here? Yes, Father. Indra, are you here? Yes, Father. Vayu, are you here? Yes, Father. And then his last words where he left were, damn, who's in the store? So,
And then he dies?
what's that?
And then he does.
Then he died. So, if you look at what Krishna actually says in the Gita, Jang Jang Vapi Smaran Bhavam, Yang means whatever. When you repeat certain words in Sanskrit, it's like yam means what, and yam whatever. Like yada means when, yada whenever. Or ya means who, and then yo whoever. So whatever, yang vapi, and vapi means whatever indeed. Smaran, remembering whatever indeed. Yang vapi smaran bhavam, whatever bhava you remember. And so we'll talk about the word bhava. The word bhava, of course, comes from the Sanskrit verb bhu, which means to be or exist. In fact, the be in bhava or bhavati is the same be as an English word be, like to be. Sometimes say it's funny because the most famous line in all of English literature is completely wrong. Because the first point in the Bhagavad Gita is to be or not to be. That is not the question. Isn't it? That's the first lesson of Bhagavad Gita. To be or not to be is not the question. So anyway, so so bhava means a state of being. And it can also be in an emotional state of being, as in the bhavas. Like there's bhavas, like ecstatic states. But the root is like existence or state of being, either an emotional state of being, or a physical state of being, or a spiritual state of being. So Krishna says, whatever bhava you remember, that's what he literally says, whatever bhava you remember, whatever state of being. So it's not just remembering like, I don't know, some like your favorite ice cream flavor or something. Oh my God, I'm gonna take Bertha's, I don't know, ice cream or something, or someone working in an ice cream store. Or to remember, for example, to remember that someone that owes you money, or remember some sex episode. Krishna is talking about a state of being. And I'll go on further until you understand what he means by that. Yang vapi smaran bhavam tyajati ante. Tyajati, when giving up. Ante, at the end. That's where we get the English word end. Ante kalevram, the body. Giving up the body at the end, whatever state of being one remembers. Tang eva. You will only go to that very. So tung means in each and every case. Because Krishna said, because the yam means whichever state, and then tum to that state. But tum, the repetition means in each and every case. Tum eva. You will only go to that, whatever it was. Ivai eti, you will go konteya. Why? Because sada tad bhava bhavita. Because you were always cultivating that state. I mean, it's hard. I try to say it in English. I think I did it in my Gita translation. Sada tad bhava bhavita. Because you were always sort of like existing in that existence, or you were always like trying to be in that state of being. And so it's like when I was a kid and I worked in my father's supermarket, and at the end of the day, you push a button on the cash register and the daily total came up. And so that's what it is. That's the button that gets pushed. Like people say, they have near-death experiences, their life flashed before them. So what Krishna's talking about is not at the last moment, you see a dog or something. He's talking about the way you lived your life, the things you were always cultivating, the things you were always concerned about. So it's not that if you lived a good devotee life, but at the very end you see a dog, then you become a dog, which would be absurd. I mean, Krishna's not an idiot. And it's not that if you didn't live a good life, but at the very end, you say Krishna, that, you kind of like, it doesn't matter that you didn't actually serve Krishna so much. I mean, certainly there are benefits. So it's really about how you live your life. Sada, how you always behaved, the things you always place value on, the way you always lived your life. In other words, it's common sense.
But Bharat Maharaj, he was at that, he was a Baba level.
Yeah. However, the last, I don't know, maybe it was like year of his life. It's not that Bharata was doing his bhakti yoga practice and then at the end, oh, a poor deer, and then he became a deer. No, that's not what happened. He gave up his practice. He became completely absorbed in this little deer. That became his life. But because of his previous practice, he got kind of a combo, where he had a deer body, but he had a devotee head consciousness. I'll take the deer devotee combo.
The same thing with Ajamila. He just got a chance to practice bhakti.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, it's Ajamila. The reason I say it is because whenever I hear Ajamil, it sounds like a Vedic breakfast cereal.
Happens at me.
It does sound like that, doesn't it? It does. When I need some get up and go in the morning, I reach for Ajamil. Anyway, it's actually, but you're right. That's a very good example.
Yeah, people think, oh, he said Narayan, he was liberated. That's not what happened.
Yeah, he got a chance to finish up his bhakti yoga. So what the Ajamila story actually proves is the statement in the Bhagavad Gita second chapter that Neha Bikrama Nashtosti. There is no loss in this endeavor. Pratyavayo Nividyate, nor does diminution occur. So alpa means little. Just like in India, they say alpa, little. They say it in English too. They kind of translate directly. They say, don't they say Ramacharita, little?
Oh, yeah.
Because that's alpa. So, and su means very. Since you know Spanish, those know Spanish or even Italian probably, it's very interesting because in Spanish or Portuguese, the word bien can mean well, like to do something well, but can also mean very, like él es bien malo. So lo hizo bien, he did it well, or él es bien malo, like he's really bad. So the word really or very is bien. It's the same thing with the Sanskrit word su. Su actually means good or bien or bene in Italian. But you can also say like someone is like bien malo. Like for example, su alpum, like very little. So su can just mean very bad. Su, like you can, yeah, yeah, it's just like the Spanish word bien or bem in Portuguese. I thought that was interesting. It can mean like good or well, like sukriti, but could also just mean very, like su alpum, very little. So Krishna says, even sualpam api, even very little, asya dharmasya, of this dharma, trayate, delivers one, mahato bhayat, from the great danger. Uh, so it's interesting, the bhaya, the word bhaya, like abhaya, Prabhupada, bhaya can either mean fear or the cause of fear, which is danger. We become afraid when we perceive danger. So the word bhaya doesn't merely mean fear, it also means danger, that which provokes the fear. So it can save you from the greatest danger. So anyway, so that was Ajamila's case. He was saved from the greatest danger, which is becoming degraded into a terrible life or undergoing terrible punishment. Now, one interesting thing, this, and I can't resist. This is a really, really important point. That Ajamila is always cited as an example of Agyata Sukriti, because when he chanted Narayan, he wasn't thinking of God, he was thinking of his son. However, there is such a thing as Agyata Sukriti, but I think it's been misunderstood within the Hare Krishna movement, which I think has led to all kinds of problems for the movement, such as not bothering to have intelligent, relevant, appropriate preaching strategies because the benefit is automatic. So, and then I want to explain the real Agyata Sukriti, which Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita, which is very different. The point is, first of all, Ajamila had, as Brahmatirtha said, he'd already earned a certain advanced status in Krishna consciousness. So he was restored to his previous position. He was restored to the spiritual position that he had earned by his own practice. And that's the real Agyata Sukriti. In other words, because he didn't remember that he'd been a devotee. Is there a Bhagavad Gita here? Many. Okay, I want to read the verses in the Gita where Krishna describes actual Agyata Sukriti. And this discussion, you're a leader now, you got to do something. It's when this discussion begins, because in the Bhagavad Gita, we're used to just like one verse, one class, one verse. But the Bhagavad Gita has paragraphs and topics and things like that. So there's one paragraph that begins when Arjun asks, what happens to someone that falls down from their practice? And the word he uses, ayati. Yam or yat means to endeavor, like yatate means that one endeavors, and it's used a lot in the Gita and the Bhagavatam. And so yati is someone who's endeavoring. In other words, someone who's practicing spiritual life. And so then ayati, one that fell down from the practice. So Arjun asks in this whole discussion starts at let's see. Ayati 637. And Arjun says, Ayati, someone that fell down from their practice, but Shadayopeto, but was endowed with faith. They really believed in you, Krishna. But yoga chalita manasa, but their mind was deviated from yoga, from their spiritual practice. Aprapya, not achieving. Yoga samsiddhi, the ultimate perfection of spiritual life. Kangating, to what path or to what destination Krishna gachati, or Krishna person goes. Like what path do they, which way do they go? Literally, which way do they go? And then Arjun asks a rhetorical question, Kachin, which in Sanskrit is like, isn't it the case that? Kachin nobaya vibrastas. Is it not, or is it not that the person has been lost in both material and spiritual life, like a rent cloud? They perish, apratishto, with no foundation. Because they've lost their footing in spiritual life. They kind of, messed up their material life. They dropped out of college, joined the movement, and so they have no standing anywhere. Apratishto, a great, mighty, and important vimu, bewildered, brahmanakpati on the spiritual path, literally.
Good question.
Yeah. And then Arjuna says, Etan me samshaya in Krishna. This is my doubt, Krishna. Very simple. I'm translating it very literally. This is my doubt, Krishna. Chetum arhasya sheshata. And in English, you dispel a doubt. What do they say in Spanish? What do you do to a doubt in Spanish? Disiparna do the
Disipar.
Yeah, in Sanskrit, you
Okay.
cut away a doubt. You cut off a doubt. So Arjuna says, Krishna, it's right for you to cut this doubt. Twadanya, beside you, Sankshayasyasya, of this doubt, Cheta na hupapadyate, literally means the cutter is not to be found. For the cutter of this doubt is not to be found, or the dispeller of this doubt. So then, here's what Krishna says. He says, Partha naiveha namutra, Partha, not in this, what was that? What?
Yeah.
Oh, not in this life, nor in the next. Indeed, is that person lost. That person is not lost, or that person's destruction does not occur in this life or the next. Nahi kalyana kritkasya, because no one who does good, Arjuna, durgating tata gachati, will go on a bad path. In other words, no one who does good will go to a bad destination. So then Krishna says, what happens to that person? And of course, these famous verses, Prapya Punya Kritang Lokan, literally achieving the worlds of the bienhechores, of the pious actors, literally achieving the world of the pious actors. Ushitwa, dwelling there, Shaswati Sama, for so many years, innumerable years. Suchinang Srimatang Gehe, Geha means Griha, it's just another word. It's another word for Griha, Geha. So in the home of pious, like clean people or prosperous people, yoga brashta, one phone from yoga, abhijayate, takes birth. And then this is what? Then Krishna says, or else, even better, atavad yoginameva, kule bhavati dhimatam. Or even one actually comes even better into the family of spiritual practitioners, yogina, who are wise. Etari durlabhatarang. This indeed is very hard to achieve. Loke janma janidrisham, such a birth in this world. I'll give you a very literal translation. So then, and now here we get to the real point of what is actually a Gyata Sukriti. So this person was practicing spiritual life. They couldn't complete their practice, but they had faith. The person had faith. They were sincere. They were really sincere. They had faith in Krishna, but couldn't complete the practice. So Krishna rewards them. They go up to these higher worlds and they dwell there for like innumerable years. Then they come down, they take a really nice birth. So then Krishna says, Tatra, they're in that situation now. They've had a nice birth. They've come back and taken a nice birth. Tang buddhi sang yogam, that strong connection. Yoga means link, and you have sang yoga, which means like a strong link. That strong link with spiritual understanding. A strong link with spiritual understanding is buddhi sang yoga. And labate, they revive it. They again achieve it. Why? Because of a Gyata Sukriti? Because it is Purva Dehikam, which comes from the words Purva Deha, which means previous body. That's where we get the word previous, Purva. for historical linguistics, the vowels are much more unstable. So you check the consonants. So previous, PRV, purva, PRV. Anyway, in other words, the strong link with spiritual understanding. So like Brahmatirtha, it's like you took a course in Indian philosophy or something. Then you met Prabhupada. And so Prabhupada's speaking, it's like, you just, right? You recognize this as truth. Why? Because it's from the previous body. So the Agata Sukriti is that you didn't remember that you were practicing Krishna consciousness. That's the Agyata Sukriti. Those are the good deeds you did that were unknown. And of course, the word Agyata Sukriti is not in Shastra anyway. So, and then Krishna says, Yatatecha, the person, and one endeavors, that person endeavors to do bhuya. From that, one endeavors further, Sangsidhao, for the highest perfection, Kurunandana. And then Krishna, he's going to emphasize it again. He says it is purvabhyasena, abhyasa in the Gita. I mean, it's later in Lord Chaitanya's movement, the word sadhana is used. So whenever you see abhyasa in the Bhagavad Gita, it means sadhana, spiritual practice. And purva, again, previous. Krishna said, you have this knowledge or this connection with Krishna consciousness, purva dehikam. It comes from your previous body. And now he says that purva, so you had a connection with this knowledge because you had a previous practice. Purvabhyasena, by your previous practice in your last body. And then Krishna says, Tenaiva, by that alone. There's no other reason. It is by that alone. It's not just because you ate some prasadam and then you became a devotee. Millions of people have eaten prasadam and not become devotees. Millions of people have heard Harinam, and there's no indication they're becoming devotee. Say, well, in the future they will. Of course, in the future they will. But Krishna also says in the Bhagavad Gita, so Krishna says, let me finish this verse, and then I'll get to the other point. So Krishna says, it is by your previous practice, tena eva, and by that alone, not by anything else. Hriyate yavashopya, that you were just literally sort of carried away. Just as Prabhupada translates Hari, one who takes away our miseries, this is the passive form of the verb. Hriyate, just to be taken away by something. So that experience that you join the devotees, right? Then you have this experience, I can't believe I'm joining the Hare Krishna movement. Well, there go all my friends. There goes my family, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
so that experience. Adios, amigos. So that experience where you're literally, Krishna says, carried away by it. And he avasha, involuntarily. Avasha means involuntarily. And jigyasurapi yogesya, you want to understand spiritual life. I mean, these are all the symptoms we experience, right? You're carried away. It's practically involuntary. You can't figure out how it happened, but it happened. And now you want to understand spiritual life. Shabda Brahmati Vartate, something else we experienced, as Prabhupada says, above the ritualistic principles of scriptures. Like our family say, why can't you stay in your own religion? You already have a religion. Why? Krishna explains that here. Because he says a person who was practicing Krishna consciousness in the past life, who already had an understanding, is already above just ordinary karma kanda religions. So the religions that our family wanted to take us back to, we'd already done that. So it's all explained here. It's all explained here. This is the real Agyata Sukriti. What about the other idea where, and it's interesting, Prabhupada once wrote me a letter I was the president of Gainesville. I was a Grihasta, and I forget what the context was, but he was telling me that we do not engage in mental speculation, but we may engage in philosophical speculation. And this is how he explained the difference. He said, Krishna says in the Gita, Rasoham apsukonte, I'm the taste of water. So if you accept Krishna's statement, and then you're trying to understand how is Krishna the taste of water, that's philosophical speculation. You can do that. If you speculate, well, is that true or not? That's mental speculation. So Prabhupada always talked about a gata sukriti, if they just hear the sound. So I accept that as true. However, how is it true? So that's what I'm doing. I'm not engaged in trying to refute Prabhupada's statement. I'm trying to understand how it's true, and I'm trying to reconcile Prabhupada's statement with the fact that externally, it doesn't seem to work very well. Because we give out millions of plates of prasadam. We give out, we get, millions of people just in Poland alone to chant Hare Krishna, and yet don't make devotees very much. So what's going on? How do we reconcile Prabhupada's statements with the real world? And of course, the answer will be, well, in their next life. Well, there's a problem with next life, too. And that comes in the last verse. This is Krishna speaking. Don't kill the messenger. The last verse of chapter 17 of the Gita, Krishna says, I'll read it to you, Ashadhaya hutam dattam tapastaptam, it's a tongue twister, kritam chajat, asad iti uchate partha, nacha tat praitya noiha. Now, to give you a literal translation, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna will explain in chapter 18, he's already mentioned in chapter 17, that there are three fundamental components of spiritual or religious life, which are yajna, dana, tapa, sacrifice, charity, and austerity. And so yajna means giving upward to someone superior to you. You offer a sacrifice to a greater power. Dana means giving down to someone less fortunate than you, and tapas means just giving, means just giving up. So you give up, you give down, and then you just give away, or you give up something. And so, and that's why, because in chapter 18, it's like this whole Bhagavad Gita started because Arjuna didn't want to do his duty. And so therefore, from the beginning, the Gita, in a sense, is pivoting on the philosophical topic of what can you give up, what can you not give up? And in a sense, that's kind of like the whole, the spine, it just runs through the Gita. That's a thread that runs through the Gita. And so in chapter 18, Arjuna says, let's just do this one last time. Because the Gita started with a debate between Krishna and Arjuna over how do you define renunciation. And now, at the end of the Gita, Arjuna says, let's just wrap this up one last time. Let's make sure I understand renunciation. And then it turns out, as Krishna says, some people say that you give up all activities as somehow not good for spiritual life. Other people say there are three activities you never give up. Three activities you never give up, which are, again, yajna, dana, and tapas. And so they're mentioned in the last verse of chapter 17 by Krishna. They're mentioned again. And so, in other words, from this context, it's very clear that these are the three pillars of spiritual life or religious life. You offer to God, you give charity, you're merciful, and of course, the greatest charity is spreading the glories of Krishna. And then you give up things that are incompatible with a civilized life or a spiritual life. So when we talk about yajna, dana, tapa, we're talking about spiritual life completely. And these are the words Krishna uses here in the last verse of chapter 17. And so what Krishna says is that anything, Prabhupada translates, anything done to sacrifice, charity, or penance without faith in the Supreme, O son of Prita, is impermanent, it is called asat, and is useless both in this life and the next. Now, Prabhupada's added something, by which is also philosophically, of course, correct, but let's look at what the verse says literally, because Prabhupada sometimes Krishnizes the verses, which is the ultimate truth of everything. However, what does this verse literally say? Krishna says that anything which is hutam, hutam means offered in sacrifice. That's where you get the word hotra, like Agni Hotra. So it's just another way of saying sacrifice. So, but ashraddhaya, without faith. In other words, and the word faith is defined in the CC, but so without faith means you don't really believe in what you're doing. You may not know what you're doing. You don't really believe in it. And so whatever you offer in sacrifice, datam, given, whatever is given in charity, or tapas taptam, which you can't do in English. It's almost like whatever austerity you austere, because you have the verb too in Sanskrit. So, or whatever austerity you perform, kritam chaja. So, in other words, whatever you perform in a religious context, anything you do, kritam chaja, whatever you do in a religious context, ashraddhaya, without believing in what you're doing. And of course, you can't believe in something if you're unconscious of it. You can't believe in things you don't know. And so Krishna says, so you can offer sacrifice, you can give charity, you can perform austerity, but asariti, Prabhupada translates it impermanent, useless. Krishna says it is useless, it is said to be useless. Prabhupada said it's called useless, Partha, and nachatat. It will not act in your next life or in this life. So bye-bye in the next life.
So even further.
Krishna, Prabhupada said it is useless even in the next life. So what happens if, let's say you go out and do Harinam, and you go out and do Harinam, and some people walk by, and the sound goes in their ear. However, they do not believe that I'm purifying myself by hearing the holy name of Krishna. They absolutely do not believe that. They don't even know it's the name of God. They are not really interested. According to the Gita, they haven't really participated in a useful sacrifice, Sankirtan Yagya.
But they're getting benefited, right?
What?
They do get the benefit just by listening, that's all.
Well, but Krishna, but they don't believe in it. Krishna's saying here, if you don't believe in it, if you don't have faith in it, then it's useless. What about prasadam? They eat it, but they don't believe that this is spiritual food. What about, just say buying a book and never reading it, which is, what happens in most cases. So the whole Hare Krishna movement, especially in the West, because in India, people kind of know what's going on. But let's say the whole Hare Krishna movement outside of people from a Hindu background is based on the power of manipulating people by getting them to do things which they don't believe in and don't understand. And that is the central strategy of the Hare Krishna movement outside India. Harinam, book distribution, and, and most, very few people actually read the books. And eating prasadam. Now, Prabhupada said things like if they touch a book, if they hear it. So what I'm saying is I'm engaging now in philosophical speculation. I'm not going to reject what Krishna says. And as Prabhupada himself teaches us, Prabhupada teaches, Prabhupada says, if the guru asks for water, don't bring milk. I'm not going to bring Prabhupada theological milk. And Prabhupada also says that in this system, Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, Shastra is the most important. In other words, the guru is bona fide because he agrees with Shastra. It's not Shastra's bona fide because he agrees with the guru. I mean, it is. If there is a Shastra that doesn't agree with Prabhupada, that means it doesn't agree with the Gita. And because it doesn't agree with the Gita, therefore it's useless for us. So here's how it's true. Prabhupada said many times, as the movement was growing explosively, that Krishna had sent all kinds of devotees from past lives, exactly the kinds of devotees described in chapter 6 of the Gita. And Prabhupada said they're just waiting for the Sankirtan party to come and pick them up. And so therefore, for past life devotees, or you could say past life people who are half devotees, or were interested, or maybe, whatever. Yes, they just have to touch the book, or hear from a devotee, or buy a book, or they have to just eat prasadam, or they have to hear the Harinam. And actually, Prabhupada said that. There are many past life devotees. My point, the reason the Hare Krishna movement in the West is not actually succeeding. I mean, we can, tell ourselves stories to feel good, but it's not actually working. It's not, Prabhupada said his whole international mission depended on making it work in the West. It's not happening. Most people in the West now have never heard of us. I wouldn't call that, booming success. And so basically, my analysis is that what Prabhupada said is true. Certainly, what Krishna said in the Gita is true. And therefore, the conclusion, which accepts both is true, is that ISKCON has basically burned through the past life devotee inventory. We've burned through the inventory. And there are not, at the present time, thousands of past life devotees just waiting for us to come and pick them up. We're now dealing with real, honest to God karmis and gyanis and vikarmis. These are not past life devotees. We just got to do right now. People just show up at the temple. I want to be a devotee. We're dealing with people that you cannot just manipulate into salvation. You actually have to persuade them. You actually have to persuade them. You actually have to be appropriate. It's very interesting. I've said this so many times.
I'm gonna have to listen online. I have a doctor's appointment.
Okay,
at 30.
yeah. You agreed on it.
I do. Oh, my 11 o'clock. Counted me.
Oh, yeah. Oh, thanks for reminding me. 11. 11? I thought it was 10.
Yeah,
I thought it was 10:30.
I'll double check.
Okay. So anyway, my motive here is to serve Prabhupada. I don't have another motive. And anyway, I won't go into my whole thing. Leela won't let me. But I won't go into the whole thing. But therefore, that's where we stand. Krishna says it will have, as Prabhupada translates it, asat useless in this life and the next life. And the next life. So we need to actually persuade people. We need to attract people. There are many ways to do that. We need to make music, just like when devotees open restaurants, because there's real money involved. They are extremely attentive to public taste. But when we do music, we don't really care about public taste because, of course, we haven't really invested money in it. So it's just like, take it or leave it. You don't like this kirtan? Tell it to Yamaraj. There's this sort of, it's interesting because the Brahmin class became degraded in Kali Yuga because they became arrogant, just like Shringi became arrogant and cursed Parikshit Maharaj. So the Brahminical arrogance, which ruined India, by the way, and ruined Vedic culture, was this like, take it or leave it. So there is no school in ISKCON. There's no group of devotees in ISKCON who are mastering Western music so they can do music so powerful that, there are devotees who are very good musicians. There are devotees who are very good musicians and they make nice music. But it's just like, it's very interesting because in ISKCON we have some of the best seamstresses probably in the world. They make amazing clothes for the deities, amazing cooks, amazing philosophers. Nope. I mean, you do have some very good philosophers, but is it something in ISKCON that like a significant number of devotees are mastering philosophy, like Lord Chaitanya's followers did, by the way, as Rupa Goswami did, as Sanatana Goswami did, as Jiva Goswami did, as so many great Vaishnavas did, as Lord Chaitanya's God, but still he went through the pastime of being a great scholar. So is this kind of place where realizing that Prabhupada's whole Western mission depends on making it work in the West, that we have some devotees mastering, beautiful Western music, mode of goodness music? Is it that some devotees are mastering philosophy? Others are we building the best schools? Do we have schools all over the Western world? No. There's one great school in Alachua. Krishna Priyadasa he has a great school, and there's the other school, the Vishwambar. There are two excellent schools. There's an excellent school in Dallas. That's it. Latin America, thousands of devotees, total number of devotee schools, 0. Europe, thousands of devotees, total number of schools, 0.
For K-12.
Yeah, no, and for college. Bhaktivedanta College closed years ago. And of course, because we come from an extremely learned Vaishnava tradition, we obviously have accredited seminaries. No, we don't. So I'll stop here. And so it's more important than ever that we actually study, that we become learned, that we develop great skills to attract Western people, because the past life devotees, they're pretty much already here. And there'll always be some more, not enough to make this movement work in the West, among Western people. So thank you very much. And Hare Krishna.